Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Lees and here are today's top stories. As England is entering the second stage of lockdown easing, many people rush to have a pint or a haircut. Non-essential shops are reopening, with some people queuing outside from early morning. And politicians and MPs pay tribute to the late Prince Philip. Hairdressers welcomed back customers keen for a trim on Monday, as lockdown restrictions eased around the country. And pubs opened their beer gardens to those looking to raise a glass and get together with others after nearly 4 months. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings reports.
For over 3 months in England, we've not been able to get a haircut or enjoy social occasions with friends, family and colleagues at the local pub. But today that changes as the government eases limits on who we can meet up with outside. But first, the haircut.
When you're used to short hair, living with long hair is frustrating. My regular gents hairdresser was open early today, predicting a rush. They were hard at it first thing when I arrived. One gentleman was relieved to come to a professional barber.
Well, basically I had to cut my own hair, and it was just a nightmare because my wife wouldn't touch it just in case she done it wrong, so I had to do it myself.
Another was very happy for a reason other than the cut.
Well, my hair's been a mess since lockdown, and it's a good day because the pubs are opening, and that's why I've came so early, so that I'm one of the first in there.
And I was a happy man too as I got my cut.
Okay, so that's the haircut taken care of. Let's go to the pub. So here we are outside the Jolly Coopers in Epsom, and they're just opening after this long lockdown, in fact from last year. So I'm sure they are very excited and the customers are already arriving. I spoke with Angela, who owns the pub, with her husband, and Dan, the general manager.
Well, to be honest, it's been a bit weird because obviously, you're not interacting with anybody. Financially, obviously, it's been a disaster, not just for us, but for everybody. But from the staff point of view, everybody's been doing their thing, and it's just nice to get back.
She said emotionally it's been a roller coaster.
But like everybody, no one's not been touched by COVID. So there's, in the background, there's a lot going on for other people with illnesses and bereavements, and I think that puts everything into perspective.
Dan says it's really difficult when you're used to seeing people on a daily basis and then not.
Just being stuck in your own four walls and taking the dog out for a walk. Today will be, I think, a very, very busy day, and it will be really good to see some long lost faces.
The first man here today was Chris.
We've got a good spot, our friends are here, our wife's over here, and we're looking forward to our first pint.
This next man says the pub has had it so tough.
They needed the support, and so we thought it'd best come out and give it to them, come hell, high water or snow.
The pub is filling up with eager customers, joining with friends to share the day. Excuse me while I fill up with my lunch. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, the Jolly Coopers, Epsom, Surrey.
I'm in Oxford Street here in central London, the busiest shopping area in Europe. With shops about to reopen, people have already started to queue outside the stores. Some were waiting for over an hour in the unusually cold April weather. A general feeling of optimism for people who are out.
Just everyone seems a lot more happier being out and about, so it's just a nice change of pace from going to the supermarket, really.
You can go in and walk around. It's not the same like buying online, It's nice to feel and see the product you buy.
I like coming into central London and shopping. It's a nice environment to shop.
But signs that many businesses or shops didn't make it through, with some boarded up. Research from the local data company finds 17,500 chain store outlets in Britain won't ever open their doors again. But for those that are open, retail analyst Springboard say people going into shopping destinations this morning across the UK jumped more than 200% compared to last week, and is up 500% compared to last year, when the UK was under its first lockdown. Compared with figures from 2 years ago, though, central London has taken a hit, with shopper numbers down by 68%. In the UK overall, numbers are down by 14%. Brent Cross Shopping Centre's manager is confident people will continue to shop.
I think we've got a great loyal local customer base, and they're really keen for the non-essential stores to get open. And we know based on previous lockdowns, we were very busy from the word go. We very much look forward to it.
Pandemic restrictions mean we've been made to shop online. Retailers here will hope more people come into the store again. A huge sign on Oxford Street reads, "Let's change the way we shop." Workouts are back on too, with gyms reopening.
It's been very hard for us, especially with the second lockdown now. So we're very delighted that we're back open.
A hope that these latest easing of restrictions are steps on the road to recovery. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
Politicians from across the political spectrum have paid tribute to Prince Philip during special sessions held in Parliament and regional assemblies across the UK.
Lawmakers in both chambers of Parliament return early from recess to pay tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, who died on Friday. Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking in the House of Commons.
By his tireless, unstinting service to the Queen, the Commonwealth, the armed forces, the environment, to millions of young people and not so young people around the world, and to countless other causes, he gave us, and he gives us all, a model of selflessness and of putting others before ourselves. And though I suspect, Mr. Speaker, that he might be embarrassed or even faintly exasperated to receive these tributes, he made this country a better place. And for that, he will be remembered with gratitude and with fondness for generations to come.
Over in the House of Lords.
My Lords, I would like to invite all to rise and observe a minute's silence in memory of His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
Earlier in Holyrood, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon led the tributes in the Scottish Parliament.
I always enjoyed my conversations with the Duke of Edinburgh on these visits, indeed on all of the occasions that I met him. And I was struck by how different he was in private to the way he was sometimes characterised in public. He was a thoughtful man, deeply interesting and fiercely intelligent.
In Stormont, Arlene Foster, First Minister of Northern Ireland, praised the traditional values she said the Prince exemplified.
In this era, too many too readily pour scorn over the traditional values which he exemplified. When you see what his values achieved throughout his life, you see how traditional values can shape a better world. He showed, of course, that you can believe in the best of tradition and the inevitability of change at the same time.
Few in Britain can remember a time when Prince Philip had not been part of the national life. As people mourn him, they are also reflecting on a bygone era.
The life of Prince Philip was celebrated at church services across Britain on Sunday, with a special service held at Canterbury Cathedral.
As part of 8 days of national mourning, people gathered at royal palaces to leave flowers.
Meet in tribute to His Royal Highness the
while religious and political leaders expressed support for the 94-year-old Queen, the world's oldest and longest reigning monarch. Her husband, Prince Philip, who was officially known as the Duke of Edinburgh, died at Windsor Castle on Friday. He was 99. At Canterbury Cathedral on Sunday, Justin Welby, leader of the Global Anglican Communion, said the fact the Prince had lived to within 2 months of his 100th birthday did not soften the blow for those who had loved him.
Loss is loss. For each person it is felt individually and reaches into the heart variously.
Buckingham Palace have said the funeral would be held on Saturday, April 17th, marked with long-established plans redrawn and scaled down because of COVID-19 restrictions. There will be no public processions, and it will be held entirely within the grounds of Windsor Castle and limited to 30 mourners. Prince Harry will return from the US, but his wife Meghan, who is pregnant with their second child, will not, on her doctor's advice. Officials say they hope the occasion will help reunite the family and rebuild ties.
We take a further look at what can be expected at Prince Philip's funeral at Windsor Castle this coming Saturday.
Following Prince Philip's own personal wishes, his funeral will recognise and celebrate his life and service to the Queen, the country and the Commonwealth. It is to be a ceremonial royal funeral rather than a state funeral, the same as for the Queen Mother. Before the funeral, Prince Philip's coffin will rest in the private chapel at Windsor Castle. On the day of the funeral, the coffin will be carried to the chapel in a Land Rover he helped design, flanked by military pallbearers in a small ceremonial procession. Members of the royal family and Prince Philip's household will walk behind the coffin. The funeral service will start with a national minute silence at 3 p.m. After the service, he will be interred in the Royal Vault in St George's Chapel. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will not be among the funeral guests to make space for as many family members as possible. The funeral will be broadcast live on TV.
Northern Ireland also saw an easing of lockdown restrictions. The regional government on Monday lifted the stay-at-home order. It had been in place for over 3 months. Instead, it put out a stay local and work from home message. Non-essential shops can restart click and collect services. All pupils are returning to school for the first time since Christmas. And 10 people from 2 households can now meet up in private gardens. But hospitality and visitor attractions remain closed. The UK reported 7 deaths within 28 days of testing positive for the CCP virus on Sunday, but its lowest daily toll since mid-September.
On Sunday, the UK reported just over 1,700 cases, also the lowest since the beginning of September. At the peak of the second wave, over 1,800 deaths were seen on January the 20th. The total death toll now stands at 127,000. Separate figures from the Office of National Statistics shows nearly 150,000 deaths with COVID-19 mentioned on the death certificate. The UK is accelerating the rollout of second-dose vaccinations. For 4 consecutive days in the last week, more than 400,000 people per day got their second dose. That means nearly 7.5 million people have received the full dose, and over 32 million people have received at least 1 dose. As England enters a new stage of lockdown easing, a scientist says the risk of 2 vaccinated people catching the virus from meeting indoors is tiny. Professor Tim Spector from King's College London says the risk is around 1 in 400,000. He also says the risk of bumping into someone with symptomatic COVID is 1 in 1,400, and vaccinated people should feel a bit more relaxed.
Up next, the Border Patrol Union in the US says the surge at the US-Mexico border is the biggest they have seen. That and more when we return.